What's going on, everybody? Kevin Sullivan from XTIUM here with another video today to specifically talk about security. So if you are a technologist, if you work professionally in technology, and likely even if you don't, you are probably regularly having conversations that involve security and specifically cybersecurity. Frankly, the reality is the threat landscape that faces all of our organizations and even all of our private data has really never been greater than it is today. Unfortunately, that is also true of tomorrow. Tomorrow's threats will likely surpass those that we deal with today, and that trend is going to continue for at least some time, as there is a cybersecurity arms race that is going on right now. There are more bad actors leveraging better tools and better leveraging things like artificial intelligence to find new, inventive, and more productive ways to compromise organizations, compromise systems, steal data, commit things like ransomware attacks to ultimately exploit and extort money out of individuals and companies and organizations that are simply looking to, continue to do business in the same fashion that they've done it for the longest time. But we see a lot of this change, especially within the last 5 years post-COVID, as we've seen more of a decentralized and hybridized workforce where users who used to come into a physical location that could have some additional security or hardening put in place are now working remotely. And while that's great from a productivity standpoint and an accessibility and a mobility standpoint, right, the ability to access your stuff, right, your data and your applications from wherever you may be, there's also an inherent risk that comes with that as well. Because if you're providing that remote access to your users, you're potentially also providing that remote access to people who are not your users. So cybersecurity has certainly become an even more paramount part of all technology conversations within the last few years, and we only expect that trend to increase. So when we talk about security, what are some of the things that are really important that organizations should be focusing on going into and through 2025 and with an eye to the future? First and foremost, at least in my opinion, is visibility, right? You can't protect against that which you cannot see. So when we put that into technology terms from a security perspective, having I hate the expression as it's overused, but as much of a single pane of glass as you can to really understand what the data is that you're protecting, the sensitivity of it, the exposure that you have both within your own internal network as well as to the external world, and knowing what that attack surface is and how folks may look to gain entry into those systems. So that can be things like having a perimeter security tool, having some form of security incident and event monitoring, having a network security solution that's doing active scanning of your network, looking for unexpected, unanticipated, or unusual behavior. Secondarily to that, right, not only visibility, but the ability to also protect identity. Because one of the easiest ways to compromise systems is not to hack in, but to log in, right? So we have folks that are leveraging compromised accounts. We have seen a multitude of new and inventive ways of committing phishing attacks to get users to provide you the keys to the kingdom, right? They provide you their username and password, and they compromise their own identity. Either through a breach or through a phishing attack. And there's a massive presence on the dark web of ready to purchase bundles of user information, right? User credentials, logons, usernames, passwords. There are dark websites where it's the equivalent of walking down to a flea market and buying 10,000, 100,000, 1 million compromised account credentials, and then bad actors looking to use those credentials to access the systems that they were intended to protect. So, of course, once you have visibility into that, right? If you're doing some form of dark web monitoring to see when your credentials get compromised, if you have a strong visibility into the operations and security of your network and your environment, that's great from a detection standpoint, right? So we talk a lot in this industry about things like endpoint detection and response and managed detection and response. And most providers are really good at the management and the detection part of it. But where things often fall by the wayside is in the response part of it, right? In the MDR world, I always like to joke that everyone's really focused on the M and the D, and the R sometimes gets a little bit lost by the wayside, because not only is it good enough to detect threats, right, but you need to potentially stop them. And if you can't stop them, you need to remediate them. And if you can't remediate them, you need to recover from them. So there's a variety of things that have to be accounted for there through a well-articulated, well-designed, and well-structured security approach when it comes to MDR for an organization. Now, many folks out there think that, hey, look, my stuff, right, my applications, my data, my servers, my users, It's all in the cloud, so I have nothing to worry about. I'm secure because I work with XYZ cloud provider. While the cloud providers, I'm sure in many cases appreciate that vote of confidence, it's not really a great way of looking at your systems, right? Simply being in the cloud is not inherently making you secure. Some may make the argument that it could potentially decrease your security. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true either, though, right? I think that the truth is somewhere in the middle, that regardless of where your systems are hosted, regardless of where your data resides, regardless of how your users access it, we really have to make sure that we have the detection capabilities, we have the visibility and insight into the inner workings of our systems, solutions, and networks, even visibility into our data itself to understand the way that it's being utilized, who's accessing it, and what they're doing with it. The last piece that I'll talk about here is from a compliance perspective, right? Many organizations not only think like, hey, if my stuff's in the cloud, it's good, but also tend to conflate compliance with security. And while those two things are certainly related, compliance and security often are part of the same conversation. Compliance is itself not security, and security itself is not compliance. Compliance is really having an auditable standard that can be granularly proven out that your organization has a policy-based approach to the way that it intends to protect its systems, to segregate sensitive information from non-sensitive information, for how it's going to respond to certain events, right? So compliance is the playbook, if we think about it that way, right? Whereas security is the actual execution of those plays. So it's not enough to have a policy that says, hey, if a breach is detected, we're going to go out and do something. We then need to make sure from a security perspective, we actually have the right something in place that's part of that policy. So when we think about compliance and we think about security, those two things are a mid-table handshake, right? There's always going to be a security element of making sure that your environment is compliant. And there will often be a compliance element depending upon the nature of the industry in which you work, the nature of your organization, and what regulatory bodies oversee that industry, whether or not there's a compliance component to your security. But it's really important to understand the way those two things work together. So all of that said, let's talk a little bit about what XTIUM's managed security solution entails. Now, one of my favorite things about the XTIUM approach to security is that, like many of our other solution offerings, we take a layered approach to the way that we provide the solution and service. So we have a high degree of flexibility in the way that our customers tend to consume security offerings from us. If you wanted us to be your entire managed security provider where you buy our MDR package, and we provide the tooling, right? So we provide your endpoint detection and response solution. We provide your multi-factor authentication and secure single sign-on solution. We provide your vulnerability management solution, right? We do your network monitoring. We have an NSOC that's 24/7 always, right? 24/7, 365, that always has eyes on glass looking at what's happening within your perimeter and as well as attacks that are coming against your perimeter from the outside. And also even things like security incident and event management, right? So making sure that we're looking at all the different potential threat vectors that face an organization and are poised to respond and remediate and recover. Most importantly, should any of those things manifest where recovery or remediation efforts are required. That said, we also have the ability to do all of those things independently, right? So in many cases, working with a managed services provider or a cloud solutions provider, they tend to force customers to go all in on their stack. But if you were a customer that came to us that said, hey, Kevin, XTIUM team, I have an endpoint detection solution that I already know and love, and I'm not interested in getting your endpoint detection and response tooling, right? I'm not interested in what your particular antivirus, anti-malware solution that's going to run on my servers and on my desktops and on my mobile devices is, because I'm already under contract for something else and it works great. Well, that's fine, right? There's no need to potentially upset the proverbial apple cart, and you can continue to leverage that endpoint detection and response solution. The way we provide our managed security, especially with our MDR packages, we actually have a layer that sits over top with Expel. Expel being a Gartner leader in their space from an MDR perspective. What Expel gives us is the ability to aggregate a variety of different security tools that can all feed into the Expel system that provides that level of visibility, insight, and potential to remediate and respond, regardless of what the underlying systems feeding it are. So you can feed it from your EDR platform. You can feed it from your network management platform. You can feed it from your SIM solution, your SEM solution. That then gives you the ability to have an AI-backed platform in Expel that will go through and sort the signal from the noise for you, right? So one of the biggest problems that I've seen in the past in working with a variety of really intuitive and involved security solutions is you have a potential for alert fatigue, right? So systems are reporting on a variety of things every day that are actually not problematic, but security alerts tend to get lost in the shuffle because credible alerts might be one of 1,000 alerts that are received in a day or a week or a month. And it's very hard to sort through the 999 things that you're being alerted on that aren't actionable to find the one or two that are. So with our MDR platform, we have the ability to leverage an AI engine that can ensure that we're expediting the most important requests, the actionable alerts that need immediate response to the top of the stack to get into the hands of whether it's our network security operations center, the customer's network security operations center, or whomever within the customer or their managed service providers, including us, need to receive that information to take immediate corrective action on it. Not only do we have the ability to expedite that response, but we actually, in many cases, have the ability to also automate it. So the platform can take some remediation efforts in and of itself to prevent further harm from being happen should some form of a compromise or a breach occur. Now, that is the next layer up, right? So that is our MDR layer with Expel. I mentioned also the ability to have tooling. So if for some reason a customer were to come to us and say, hey, look, we're really interested in security, but we're interested in having endpoint security and not really looking to have a full, single pane of glass, high visibility MDR solution at this point in time, that's also okay, right? We at XTIUM can offer just an EDR platform for our customers. So we are ourselves a CrowdStrike shop, and we also do some security with Trend Micro through Trend Worry Free, and we can provide those solutions to our customers to run within their servers, to run within their desktops, to run within their DAS solution, to ensure that from an endpoint detection and response perspective, they have the capabilities that they need in order to keep their systems safe. So all of that to say, we have an excellent sliding scale solution that gives us the ability to offer as much or as little security as our customers are potentially looking for, whether that's protecting their servers, protecting their desktops, protecting their remote workstations, protecting their network, or protecting all of it and putting it all under one single umbrella of coverage with our Expel MDR platform. So there's a lot to be excited about, a lot of great security conversations to be had. We have a very, very deep technical bench of experts in the cybersecurity and compliance space who would love to have that conversation with you as a potential prospect or partner. And we look very, very much forward to being able to have that conversation in the near future. So I hope this has been helpful. As always, if you have any interest in learning more, any questions or any thoughts, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself, to XTIUM in general, or to the account executive with whom you work. Thanks very much.